Imagine walking down a grocery store aisle. Hundreds of colorful products line the shelves from every direction, each promising something different, something better, something uniquely yours. The variety feels almost infinite. But now, zoom out. Pull back far enough, and a very different picture emerges. Behind those thousands of labels, behind those countless brands, just a handful of corporations are quietly deciding what gets grown, what gets made, and ultimately, what ends up on your plate. This is not a conspiracy. This is simply how the modern food system has been built, deal by deal, merger by merger, over several decades. So who really controls the global food system? And why should that question matter to every single person on this planet? Let us find out. Before we go further, let us be clear about what we actually mean by the global food system. Most people picture farms when they hear this phrase, but farming is just one small piece of a vastly larger puzzle. The global food system includes everything from the seeds planted in the ground to the fertilizers and pesticides used to grow crops. The factories that process raw ingredients, the packaging that wraps your meals, the trucks and ships that move products across continents, the supermarkets that stock the shelves, and the government policies that regulate all of it. Every single link in this chain is part of the system. We are talking about an industry worth over $10 trillion annually, one that touches every human life, every single day, 3 times a day, with every meal. Now that we understand the sheer scale of the global food system, let us look at how control over it became concentrated in so few hands. Over the past few decades, thousands of small and mid-sized agricultural companies have been swallowed up through waves of mergers and acquisitions. What was once a diverse landscape of competing businesses has narrowed dramatically, leaving just a handful of mega-corporations dominating each sector. Nowhere is this more visible than in the seed industry. Seeds are the very foundation of all food production. Yet today, companies like Bayer, Corteva, and ChemChina collectively control over 60% of the world's commercial seed supply. Think about that for a moment. The starting point of nearly everything we eat is now managed by just 3 corporations. This consolidation did not happen overnight, and it was not accidental. What began as agricultural innovation has quietly engineered a system of financial dependency that keeps millions of the world's farmers trapped. Farmers cannot do what their ancestors have done for thousands of years, which is save a portion of their harvest to replant the following season. Doing so now constitutes a legal violation, a breach of intellectual property law. Every single growing season, farmers must return to the same corporations and purchase new seeds. This seemingly simple shift has had devastating consequences. Input costs have skyrocketed, particularly for smallholder farmers in developing nations across South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America. Many take out loans to afford each planting season, hoping their harvest will cover repayments. When crops fail or prices drop, that debt compounds. Families lose land that has been farmed for generations, pushing household debt to dangerous levels and shrinking their already narrow profit margins considerably. The same corporations selling patented seeds often sell the fertilizers and pesticides specifically formulated to make those seeds perform. Bayer, Corteva, and their counterparts have built entire product ecosystems where one purchase leads inevitably to another. This is vertical integration in action. A farmer buys genetically modified seeds requiring specific herbicide-resistant chemistry, then must purchase that matching herbicide from the same company. Every input, from planting to harvest, flows through a single corporate pipeline. The consequences are severe. Farmers lose bargaining power because switching becomes economically impossible mid-season. Input costs rise without meaningful competition to check them. Now let's move up the supply chain to where raw ingredients become the packaged products lining those grocery shelves. Here, the consolidation becomes even more striking. Companies like Nestlé, PepsiCo, Unilever, Kraft Heinz, and Mondelez collectively produce thousands of brands that appear completely distinct from one another. That organic granola bar, that artisan pasta sauce, that locally marketed juice, chances are they trace back to one of these corporate giants. The illusion of choice is carefully constructed. A shopper might choose between 10 different chip brands, not realizing 8 of them are owned by the same parent company. These corporations have mastered the art of brand diversity while centralizing ownership. Independent-looking labels are acquired, repackaged, and kept deliberately separate to maintain the feeling of variety. Meanwhile, every dollar spent flows back to the same handful of corporate headquarters controlling global food manufacturing. Now let's talk about the stores where most of us actually buy our food. Retailers like Walmart, Carrefour, and Amazon have become some of the most powerful forces in the entire food system, and their influence extends far beyond simply selling products. These giants control shelf space, and that control is everything. Suppliers desperate to reach millions of customers must accept whatever terms retailers demand, including lower prices, specific packaging standards, and even changes to how food is grown or raised. Walmart alone accounts for such a massive share of grocery sales in the United States that food companies restructure entire operations just to meet its requirements. Amazon's entry into grocery through Whole Foods added another layer of digital data-driven control. The retailer no longer just sells food, it now effectively dictates the rules for everyone beneath it in the supply chain. While retailers shape what we see on shelves, there is another layer of power operating almost entirely in the shadows. Meet the ABCD companies: Archer Daniels Midland, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus. These 4 corporations are global commodity traders, and most people have never heard of them. Yet they control the movement of staple commodities like wheat, corn, soy, and rice across virtually every continent. They own the ships, the storage facilities, the ports, and the processing plants that keep the world's food supply moving. When a drought hits Argentina or a harvest fails in Ukraine, it is these companies that decide where supplies go and at what price. They operate largely outside public scrutiny, with no consumer-facing brands, yet their decisions shape what billions of people eat every single day. Beyond corporate boardrooms, food control operates at the level of nations and geopolitics. Countries that dominate agricultural production or control critical trade routes wield enormous influence over food-importing nations, essentially holding their population's survival as leverage. This is not a new phenomenon. Throughout history, food has been deliberately weaponized, from Soviet-era grain embargoes to American agricultural sanctions. But modern examples make this reality impossible to ignore. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, both nations, which together supply nearly a third of the world's wheat, became entangled in conflict. Export routes through the Black Sea were blocked, shipments halted, and global wheat prices surged dramatically. The consequences were devastating for nations across Africa and the Middle East, where millions already living on the edge of food insecurity were pushed further into hunger and crisis. The very system designed to feed the world is quietly dismantling nature's safety net. To maximize profits, agribusiness giants have aggressively promoted monoculture farming, where vast fields grow a single crop variety season after season. The results have been catastrophic for biodiversity. Over the past century, we have lost approximately 75% of the world's crop varieties. Thousands of unique plant species that once fed communities across generations have simply vanished. What remains is a dangerously narrow genetic base supporting the entire global food supply. When one disease or pest targets a dominant crop variety, entire harvests can collapse. We witnessed this with the 1970s corn blight in America, which wiped out billions of dollars in crops overnight. As climate change intensifies droughts, floods, and temperature extremes, this fragility becomes existential. But not everyone is surrendering to corporate dominance. Around the world, a powerful resistance is growing. Agroecology movements are championing farming methods that work with nature rather than against it, rebuilding soil health and reducing dependence on chemical inputs. Seed sovereignty advocates, like those connected with La Via Campesina, representing over 200 million farmers globally, are preserving and freely sharing traditional seed varieties that corporations cannot patent or control. Community-supported agriculture programs are directly connecting consumers with local farmers, cutting out corporate middlemen entirely. Indigenous communities across Latin America, Africa, and Asia are actively protecting ancestral farming knowledge and biodiversity that sustained civilizations for thousands